It's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Subaru Ascent. And the great part is this utilizes the factory knockout panel here that's going to cover everything up until you're ready to tow. You can just simply remove the two plastic push pins from below, pop this out, and then you'll have full access to your hitch. So you get a nice clean look overall, but all the usability of your 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. That size is going to be important because when choosing any accessories, whether it be ball mounts, cargo carriers, or bike racks, you're going to look for that 2" by 2". And the great thing is that's kind of the standard size. So you have plenty of options when it comes to any of those accessories. They're all going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. This is not included with the hitch, but most of the time your accessories will come with them. If you want to get a locking pin and clip, that's really nice if you plan on leaving accessories on the back of your Ascent, and that's going to be a deterrent from anyone just walking by to be able to take that. If you plan on pulling a trailer, your safety chain loops are on the top side, which is a little bit unique, but it still allows me to get a standard S-hook, even a larger clevis style. You're able to still get this on here. And the way that it sits, I'm really not concerned that that's going to cause any issues as far as rubbing with your chains, potentially on the bottom portion of the fascia. But again, that cover is going to cover that when it's not in use, so really not a big deal. Speaking of towing, this has some pretty good capacities, coming in with a gross trailer weight rating of 5,000 pounds, and that's going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. You also have a tongue weight rating of 750 pounds, which is really good. That's going to be any suspended accessories, so cargo carriers and bike racks. With 750 pounds of capacity, I have no worries that you're really going to overload that. A 4-bike bike rack will be perfectly fine on here, and you can use a weight distribution hitch on here. It is going to keep the numbers exactly the same at the 5,000 and 750, so you're really not gaining a whole lot as far as capacity, but generally that's going to help tow a little bit better some of those heavier trailers. But with all of those numbers, make sure you check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing, and then compare that with whatever you're hooking up to, as well as all of the ball mounts and accessories that you have to make sure you're not overloading anything. Now, a few quick measurements from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point. We're looking at about 2 inches, and this is going to be important for choosing folding accessories like cargo carriers or bike racks. A lot of times, if hitches are too far recessed, you're not going to be able to stow them in a vertical position. I have no worries that you're going to have any issue with it here. Just keep in mind, you're probably not going to be able to open up your rear hatch with those in the vertical position, but you can just simply drop those down and gain full access. Also important is going to be ground clearance, and this is going to be helpful when choosing a ball mount. This one sits really high. It's coming in at 24 inches, which is a massive ground clearance. So if you're picking up a ball mount, what you want to do is measure from the ground to the top of your coupler and then compare that with the 24 inches. And I would almost guarantee that whatever you're towing is going to need a drop configuration, but you can do the math to figure out exactly how much of a drop you need to get a nice level towing trailer down the road. When it comes to the installation, in order for you to be able to get this nice clean look and still use that cover panel when not in use, this is going to require pulling off the rear fascia and taking off the bumper beam, and that's where the hitch is going to live. And that may scare you off. Taking off a rear fascia is probably something you've never done. I had never done that until I started working here, but to tell you the truth, this one's one of the easier ones to do. You really don't need a whole lot of tools, and you can definitely do this in your garage or driveway. I'd give yourself maybe 2 hours, somewhere in there. You might want an extra set of hands to help you pull the fascia off, but overall, none of it's terribly difficult. And I think it's well worth the effort, because to get this clean of a look, you don't get that on a lot of different vehicles, and this is really nice. You get all that great look and all the usability. If you're doing this yourself, follow along on the video. I'll walk you through step by step, and we'll get this hitch installed. But if it's something that you're not willing to do, maybe you don't have the tools, the want, or the place to do it, that's totally fine. You can reach out to our dealer locator to find someone close to you. That way you can still get your hitch installed and be able to use it and not have to worry about that installation. Get our hitch installed, a good majority of it is going to be taking the fascia off, because our hitch is going to bolt up behind the bumper beam, and that's going to give us the cleanest look possible, especially with this access panel that's here from the factory. As we remove portions of the fascia, I would recommend having a nice organized spot to keep all of your hardware. It'll make reinstallation that much easier, and you may need an extra set of hands throughout the process. But we're going to begin by removing some plastic push pins. You can do this with a flathead screwdriver or a trim panel tool. Makes it nice and easy. And there's going to be a total of 6 of them that we need to take off, but we're going to remove 8 because there's 2 more on our access panel, and we could just take that off in the process. So starting at the corner, You're going to have notches on 4 sides. That's going to allow you to get that flat trim panel tool in, and you're going to get that center section to separate by prying that out. And try to get the whole plastic clip in one go. If it separates from the bottom portion, no worries. Just pull that out and make sure that you keep them together for reinstallation. So just follow the outside edge. So we had the 3 here, the 2 in the center, and then 3 more on the other side. So go ahead, get those all taken out. Depending on your trim, you may have splash guards on the bottom of each wheel well. If that's the case, there's going to be 2 screws as well as a fastener underneath that you're going to need to remove. We don't have those on our vehicle today, so we can move along to the wheel wells where we're going to have a plastic rivet that we can remove. A small Phillips head screwdriver generally works pretty well, or a small punch. And that rivet is going to be on this plastic wheel well trim that right where our rear fascia meets the rear quarter panel. And this one's a little bit different than the other ones. You're just going to push on the center portion. So you don't need a punch or screwdriver, really. Anything that you can press on there and give it a little bit of pressure. Now, sometimes these are still a little bit tricky to get to pop out. So once you push that in, what you can do is pull on that trim a little bit to loosen it. And if you can get your trim panel tool underneath it, you can pry that out. Sometimes going on the back side will also help. Now we'll just get the one on the other side removed as well. Now at this point, open up your rear lift gate, and the plastic panels that are in between the tail light and your weather stripping, we're going to pop those out. And with a small flathead or your trim panel tool, there's plastic clips that kind of snap these in place. They shouldn't be too tight. You might be able to get it with your hands, but a lot of times it's a little safer to do, be able to pry on the back side here. So I got this top portion out, and I'll just kind of work my way down a little bit, and comes out pretty easy. This tab goes straight down, so don't pull it straight out. You can see where these plastic push pins go into those spots. So I would start on this one, work your way down, pull this out. And that's going to give us access to the 10 millimeter that's on this tab for our fascia. We're going to get that removed. Now you can just repeat on the other side. We're ready to remove our rear fascia, and something you may want to do to help prevent any scratches on your clear coat. You don't want to damage your vehicle while just trying to get a hitch installed. So putting a run of painter's tape along the seam generally is a great way to cause any potential friction of rubbing of the panels from scratching your clear coat. Completely up to you if you want to do that. Now I do recommend having a safe place to put your fascia while getting the hitch on. It's not going to be off for that long, but again, you don't want to damage your fascia. And you're going to want an extra set of hands for this. Not that it's heavy or difficult, it's mostly just cumbersome, and there's going to be electrical connections that we need to separate. So being able to have someone work on that, hold the fascia up for you while you unplug the plugs is going to make it so much easier. So I have Joe helping me here today, and the best way to get these undone is work from each corner and make your way towards the middle. So you can just pull on that fender trim, and you're going to start to notice these will just snap. Just work your hands along it and make your way towards the middle. Now the center ones can get a little bit tricky and tough to pop off, so if you need to give it a little bit of extra pressure, don't be surprised. And don't pull too far back because we have an electrical connection here on our bumper beam. You'll just push on that tab, pull on the plug, and get that separated. Depending on trim, you may or may not have more electrical connections. Just separate those, and then you can set your fascia aside. With the fascia removed, we're going to see that our hitch is going to bolt up behind our factory bumper beam. So we're not going to be reusing the factory bumper beam. You can discard that. You can do whatever you want with it, but it's not going back on the car. And the same thing goes for the hardware. We have new hardware that we're going to put in place. But before we get our bumper beam taken off, we want to get these electrical connectors taken off. And so the best way to do that, trim panel tool. These are just plastic Christmas trees, as they call it, and they just snap into plastic. So I'll pry up, get this separated. There's one on both sides, so make sure that you're getting both of them. And with those taken out, the next thing we're going to do is tackle the bolts and the nuts that are attaching the bumper beam. And they're all going to be a 17 millimeter socket. Now, a lot of times there's going to be it's a little bit of tension just from the factory. Sometimes they put thread locker on these. So if you have an impact, by all means, go ahead and use it. If not, you're going to probably want a decent sized ratchet to get some leverage to be able to knock these loose. But we'll go ahead and take these out, and a little tip that I'll do is I'll knock this one loose but leave a few threads on here while getting the other side off. That way it's not falling off on us, it'll keep it secured. You may notice that there's this tab, and it does stick out a little bit further than flush, and our hitch is going to sit flush on here, so we need to bend this back. You can use a hammer and just it doesn't take much to just tap this in flush. If you don't have a hammer, you can just get a set of pliers and bend that in. But the main thing is this face is going to be completely flush for our hitch to go up. And we can put our hitch in place, and we'll slide it over the studs. And I mentioned that we're going to be using all new hardware. We are for the bolts, but the nuts we're going to be reusing. So if you have those handy, you can just hand thread these on both sides, and that way it'll support the hitch while we get the rest of our hardware in. Our new hardware is going to be bolts and conical tooth washers. The teeth on the washer need to go towards the hitch, so just make sure you have them in the proper orientation. And what we'll do is just get these threaded in by hand as well. Don't snug anything down, because you'll see these are oblong holes, and that's going to allow for a little bit of adjustment left or right. So getting these loosely in place will give us a chance to move the hitch to make sure that it's dead center before we tighten everything down. I mentioned finding that center line. Just using the latch is generally a good way to figure out the center portion. You don't have a ton of wiggle room left or right, but it's one of those things you don't want to have to pull your fascia off. If it's crooked and it's going to bother you, just get it right the first time. So with this in place, I've started all of my hardware. I'm going to snug it down with that same 17mm socket. You don't need to get crazy here. We're going to come back with a torque wrench, but we want to just make sure that all the hardware is drawn in. We'll just take our torque wrench and use the torque settings found in the instruction manual to properly torque these down. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, that's totally fine, but this is an important step, especially when we're using weld nuts from the factory. You can over tighten them and cause damage to those weld nuts, which is going to take away from, the structural integrity of our hitch being installed. If you need to, you can go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. We do have them available here at eTrailer, but either way, this is a very important step. With all of the hardware torqued down, we've officially installed the hitch, but we do need to get our sensors put back in place. They give you zip ties, and there's 2 holes where you could zip this up, but it does look like if you didn't damage that plug, this is going to kind of hold that in place. If you wanted added security to make sure it's not going to become loose over time, you could just run that zip tie through and get this attached. We're going to do this for both sensors. All you need to do is reinstall your fascia in the reverse order. Make sure that you're getting your electrical connections plugged back in from your fascia. And then all you need to do is load up your accessories and hit the road. With our panel back in place, that was a look and installation of the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Subaru Ascent.